Hey guys, my name is Joanna, also known as JustAnotherFlutist here on YouTube, and today we are doing yet another Flute Center of New York sponsored flute review. If you already know how this part of the review goes, go ahead and skip on over to when the review actually starts. I have partnered up with the Flute Center of New York to bring you guys monthly flute review videos, and using my code JAF, you guys get a few perks. Number 1, you get free domestic shipping within the US. Number 2, you get an extended 10-day trial, usually it's only 7 days. Number 3, you get an extended 18-month warranty on your new flute. And number 4, you can take up to 3 instruments out on trial at a time. Just to be completely transparent, I do earn a small commission on each flute that is purchased through the Flute Center of New York using my code JAF. Now, a couple notes about taking flutes out on trial. 1, please make sure you're actually in the market to buy. And number 2, the shipping costs will be charged up front, but it will be refunded back to you after you return the flutes. The Flute Center of New York also price matches any other authorized dealer, so you always know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Now, if you're wondering how to take flutes out on trial, it's actually really easy. All you have to do is call or email them. I will put a link to their contact page in the info box below. You just need to tell them the code JAF and tell them what kind of flutes you're looking for, and they can take it from there. Now, a few quick notes about actually trying the flutes. Make sure you take off all rings or any dangly jewelry that can potentially scratch the flute. Never use the polishing cloth, the swabbing gauze, or the cleaning rod that comes with each new flute because they are not yours yet. And lastly, a quick disclaimer, every flutist plays each flute differently. Like in Harry Potter, just as the wand chooses the wizard, so the flute chooses the flutist. I'm just here to describe to the best of my ability how these flutes like to be played, but it's up to you to decide which flute matches you the best. And with all that said and done, let's jump into this review. Today we are going to be reviewing the DiZhao 500 and 700 models. Fun fact, DiZhao used to work for Powell before he went on to create his own company. So the flutes that he makes are very, very well made. They have that handmade feel to them, but he does manage to keep the prices low. The DiZhao 500 features a solid silver head joint, silver plated body and mechanism, French open holes, pointed key arms, offset G, split E mechanism, and B foot joint. The DiZhao 700 features a silver head joint and body with silver plated mechanism, French open holes, pointed key arms, offset G, split E mechanism, C sharp trill key, D sharp roller, and 14K gold riser, along with the B foot joint. The 500 comes with a French case cover that is made with a durable synthetic material. There's piping all around it and it's super reinforced. It features a black plush lining and it comes with a very typical French case. Like this kind of French case is the kind of case that my professional flute is also stored in. It comes with a yellow microfiber polishing cloth, a swabbing gauze, wooden cleaning rod, and a shoulder strap. The 700 features a French case that is made with leather or faux leather material. This type of case is actually fairly rare. It has a very kind of old-fashioned feel to it. It kind of harkens back to the kind of canvas case that I have for my Meteki, which when I got it, my teacher actually told me that it's very rare to see cases like that nowadays. It features a cushioned felt lining, at least I think it's felt. The biggest surprise was the gorgeous mahogany wood French case. Spoiler, this flute is about $3,000, and normally you don't find $3,000 flutes stored in a case this gorgeous. The inside of the case is perfectly carved to fit the flute in. It's just amazing. Just as a really quick side note, do you remember how in my DiZhao 200 video I mentioned that there's that little piece of foam that DiZhao put under the G sharp key? I noticed that same piece of foam just kind of tucked away in the corner of both of these cases. It's for just under the G sharp key, just to make sure that it doesn't hit anything. The 700 comes with a black microfiber polishing cloth, and again it comes with your typical swabbing gauze, cleaning rod, and a detachable shoulder strap. And without further ado, let's get playing with these flutes. We're gonna start with the DiZhao 500. Let me just explain what we're looking at. We're basically pretending that we are looking through the left cheek and we can see into the mouth. Right here, these are the lips. Right here, these are your teeth. This is your tongue. This area here is the roof of your mouth. And this area right here is like the beginning of your throat. Out of curiosity, I actually compared this with the DiZhao 200. I think my first Flute Center of New York review video featured the DiZhao 200. DiZhao himself saw it and ended up sending me the flute for free as a gift to say thank you for doing a review on his flute, which was the sweetest thing ever. But that, of course, allowed me to make the comparison. And what I found was that the 500 plays very, very similarly, except everything you feel on the 200 is just kind of shifted forward in your mouth a little bit. So I do like that the blowing technique maintains some consistency between models. Both the 500 and the 700 generally require faster airspeed to play, and faster airspeed also means more air in general. If you look at the lip hole of the head joint, you'll notice that the cut is very, very square. The more square the cut is, the more air it can take in. So these flutes would be really good for those of you who feel like you tend to overblow other flutes. Blowing into the DiZhao 500 requires a very flat column of air. Normally I would draw it. I'll do this kind of circular, kind of cylindrical column of air, but I found that the column of air on this flute is quite wide and flat. I'm going to try to draw it like that. It fills out the width of your mouth, so you really feel the sides of the column of air against your cheeks. If you widen this column of air height-wise, you tend to lose a lot of air pressure, and that really rich tonal quality disappears. The frowny embouchure is also generally way more pronounced than on other flutes. Now, because you have a naturally larger embouchure hole because of this more extreme embouchure, you do need way faster air and more air in general to fill out the sound. In order to get the same amount of air pressure that you would get on other flutes, you need to put more air through this one. This combination of the larger embouchure hole, the more air, the faster air, results in a sound that is powerful, rich, very filled out, and projects very far. Now let's talk about how you shift from register to register on this flute. For low notes, you have this wide column of air coming out of you, while at the same time, you are also imagining a ball of air sitting right here. You can actually imagine a ball spinning like this. The only way to really make this ball work is to do a quite frowny embouchure, almost as if you're shaping your mouth around that ball. You'll also find that you need to drop your jaw to accommodate this shape of the ball. If you end up kind of locking your jaw upward, you end up crushing this space here, which is not what you want. This idea is the most apparent on the lowest note you can play on this flute, which is a B3. That ball of air is sitting so low that it's covering like 2/3 of your bottom front teeth. Now let's talk about your high notes. This ball of air shifts up here, which in effect you have to lift your soft palate in order to accommodate the shape of this ball. So I tried a D7 on this flute. That ball of air was quite far back on the roof of my mouth. I would imagine it to be like somewhere around here. So it's not quite where it meets the throat quite yet, but like at the very end of what you would consider to be the back of the roof of your mouth. High notes always require you to lift your bottom lip upward to angle the air upwards. Now, because this flute requires such an extreme frowny embouchure, you know, you're pulling your lips downward like this. You see what's happening here. If you're pulling your bottom lip upward against your top lip that's being pulled downward, you're going to really feel like the sides of your top lip are kind of getting smooshed into the sides of your bottom lip. That feeling really feels like an extreme frowny embouchure. Be careful that you're only lifting your lip upward. Very, you know, flexible with your bottom lip without actually crunching your whole jaw upward and crushing the space in here. The low notes are like here. The high notes are here. So what the heck happens between here? You really have to keep imagining that that ball is just shifting, you know, slowly upwards as you climb higher and higher. I am calling this the gray zone area. For me, it's C#5 to around G#5. You really don't feel it unless you imagine it. One last quick note before we move on. I did try the gizmo on this flute. It doesn't make a huge dramatic difference, but it does help a little bit with tuning. Now let's play with harmonics. As long as you follow the suggestions that I made in the previous section, the harmonics pop out like crazy. I could even squeeze out the 7th harmonic, albeit with quite a bit of effort. That ball of spinning air back here can only go so far back for me. It's very easy actually to match the real fingering tone, so like a G, to the harmonic fingering where you hold a low C fingering but you play that G5. Very easy to match the tonal quality between the two. That means that the harmonics themselves are quite naturally filled out. And now let's move on to tone color. We are going to be playing around with that wide column of air. The best analogy I could think of is like a super wide fettuccine noodle or like a lasagna noodle. The flatter and wider you go, the richer your sound is going to be. You're widening it that much, so you're going to have to fill it out with more air too. Now, it may not come as a surprise then that in order to get a hollower, thin sound, you turn that wide column of air into a cylindrical column of air. If we're keeping with the pasta analogy, this is your spaghetti. Cylindrical, thin, straight. And now for dynamics. We were saying that in order to get a richer tone, you widen your airstream. For a forte, you just make this as big as you can. Proportionally, it gets bigger. So it's not that only the width of it gets wider and then it doesn't get any taller. Something that feels like this. You really have to go hard, pushing lots of air through the flute in order to get a really, really big sound. Now, conversely, for piano, you would simply make this fettuccine noodle proportionally smaller. So you're looking at something like this. Okay, so it's still wide in order to maintain that rich tone. Everything that I just said was if you wanted to maintain that rich tonal quality. You can do exactly the same thing for the hollow and thin sound. Forte, you just make the whole thing bigger. And conversely, you can make that spaghetti smaller. So it's just this really tiny, almost like a straw. I don't think it comes as a surprise that the hollow, thin sound has a much more effective piano. It sounds quite haunting. I do quite like it. You will need quite a bit of lower lip action to correct the pitch. This is the case on pretty much every flute out there. Again, this will result in that extreme frowny embouchure. Now let's play with the mechanism. Don't actually bounce up super quickly, which means that if you have crazy spasms, it does kind of smooth that out for you. The really nice part is that the trill keys and the B flat lever key share the same feeling of resistance as the other keys. I do normally notice that if a flute tends to have keys that are more resistant, like way more resistant than other flutes, the trill keys and the B flat lever tend to feel really light and flimsy, but that's not the case here. So it does feel very durable. And just the fact that they have all the same resistance level, it will make it a lot easier for you to time your technique and make your technique smoother. The gizmo key is a hair lighter, but that is to be expected. That's usually the case for all flutes actually. And it's already generally more resistant than many other gizmo keys that I've tried. And last but not least, let's play a little bit with the articulation. my tongue to the bottom of my top front teeth, like that. This is actually a quite forward way of tonguing. It's not quite pseudo French tonguing though, because I don't feel that it's like all the way out here. Real French tonguing is when you're tonguing from between your lips. The ta part of the double tongue remains in the same area, but the K part of the double tongue is extremely forward. I'm aiming for the middle of the roof of my mouth. It almost feels like you're cheating your double tonguing when you do it this way. But I find that if I aimed, you know, in my normal position, which is like somewhere back here, it had that swallowed sound that normally for me does not appear until I start tonguing like down here. There's not much distance between here and here. That means that it's really easy to double tongue super fast. Now, let's talk about the DiZhao 700. DiZhao has maintained a wonderful consistency between models. Everything that I described about how the 500 likes to be played can basically be applied to the 700, but again, everything is shifted forward even more. The sound quality is also noticeably warmer, and I think it's because this particular model that I'm trying has a 14 karat gold riser, that little metal donut that connects the lip plate to the rest of the tube of the head joint. The lowest note, you feel that that ball of air is like out there. The highest notes is not like in the back here, it's actually like in the middle-ish, especially when the ball is here. I find that I need to almost like shape my top lip around the ball. The ball is so far forward that I have to make room for it. So that extreme frowny embouchure feels even more extreme. Another note about playing high notes here, because your ball of air is now this far forward, I had this weird sensation of almost having to like tilt my head back a little bit in order to give that area more space. Essentially what you're doing though is that you actually need to drop your jaw. My focus is on the top half of my mouth, which is why I have the sensation of literally like opening up like that. The gray zone notes are not the same. These notes here are B flat 4 going up to around G5. And again, a quick note about the gizmo on the 700. It is even less of a dramatic difference than on the 500. It does help a little bit with tuning though. Just to be clear, while all of this shifting the ball business is going on, you have that same really wide column of air coming out of you. Like that part does not change between the 500 and the 700. Now for harmonics. Again, as long as you followed my suggestions in the earlier section, you'll have no problem with it. For me, the 7th harmonic pops out even better. I have a smaller mouth. It doesn't feel like I'm almost swallowing the note in order to get it out. At this point, I made the very safe assumption that higher notes will actually feel easier to me on the 700 than on the 500. And it was true. And now for tone color. Same idea as on the 500. There is a slight difference though. The spaghetti is placed higher in the mouth than on the 500. On the 500, it just kind of felt like you were just changing it in the middle. But on the 700, I found that I had to shift the whole spaghetti upward. And now for dynamics. Exactly the same as on the 500. It's just that you have a lot more range. And now for the mechanism. Again, you have that same kind of resistance as on the 500, but the 700 has more bounce. This bounce and springiness responds a lot better in showpieces where you have to go super fast. I do find that if the keys don't bounce up fast enough, your runs can tend to sound a little bit laggy, and you won't get that on the 700 at all. The bounciness is especially apparent in the C# trill key, the B flat lever, the trill keys, and the gizmo. That extra bounce really helps trills sound super vibrant. Now, one really interesting thing that I found about this flute is that the D# key is noticeably smaller than on other flutes. Add on to the fact that this D# key has a D# roller, so it's actually taking up even more space on the key, so the main part of the key is even smaller. I personally really liked how small this D# key was, but that's only because my hands are so small. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but I am a small Asian lady. I just kind of spent my whole life thinking that that D# key was always going to feel gigantic compared to my pinky. But this one, I was just like, oh my gosh, is this how normal people feel when they put their pinky on a D# key? It was a lot easier for me to control. The D# roller itself is also super smooth. And last but not least, let's talk articulation. On this flute, it is pretty much a pseudo French tongue. So the tongue itself is placed even lower and more forward. When you double tongue though, you know, that ball of air that we're talking about, because you're going from here to like here, I find that your tongue then has to go around it. You're going again to the middle of your mouth. It's further away than on the 500. So it's actually not as easy to double tongue as fast as on the 500. I found that the key to make it super fast is to keep your tongue super light. You'll almost feel like you're cheating it. Now let's talk about how much these flutes cost. We're gonna start with the base price of the 500. Base price is $1,290. Now the model that I have has a split E mechanism, which you can only get on an offset G model flute. This is just because you can really only put that mechanism on if the G key is actually like shifted forward a bit. And with the split E mechanism, it is an additional $50. So the grand total here is $1,340. The base price of the DiZhao 700 is $2,242. You're getting a solid silver flute throughout. Really good price. You're getting it new. I got mine used for $2,000, and mine wasn't even open hole or B foot joint. What I have here has the split E mechanism, so that is an additional $50. The 700 that I tried today features a 14 karat gold riser. That is an additional $650. There's also a C# trill key on here, which is an additional $100, and a D# roller, which is also an additional $50. So the grand total of the 700 that I have here, which is pretty much completely decked out, comes to a total of $3,092. Quite honestly, I was very surprised with just how beautifully these flutes played. You can get quite a bit of tone color and projection on these flutes that I normally wouldn't expect from flutes in this price range. I actually changed my embouchure completely in order to play these flutes. I am not mad about this embouchure change either. Like, I could totally see myself playing the 700 throughout my entire bachelor degree. For just over $3,000 to get this much on it, it's a fraction of what I ended up getting for my professional level flute. These babies are something. I'm sure you guys have requests for other flutes to be reviewed, so make sure you put it in the comments below. Not only do I read them, but the Flute Center of New York reads them as well. Also, if you own a DiZhao 500 or 700, please let us know your experience with them in the comments below. I'm sure it'll be helpful to anyone who is researching these flutes. And also for those of you who don't even play flutes and just want to know, because random flute knowledge never hurt anybody. Don't forget to follow the Flute Center of New York on their social media, their Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I will put all those links in the info box below. And as usual, if you guys like this video, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and hit subscribe for new videos every Saturday. My last video is over there, and if you want to catch me during the week, my social media networks are down there. But otherwise, I will see you guys next week. Bye.